Hello, welcome to the sixth episode of the Spiritual Brainstorm. Today I'm going to share a sort of an insight that I got to exemplify the relationship between past, present, and future, and how you can by modifying your past from your present, you also modify the kind of future you experience. I'm going to make it a short episode because I just had a sort of an inspiration for a concrete example which will really help you to understand how all of this works and how to use this in practice to shape your reality and the kind of future you can get to experience. So here's the example. First of all, understand that the past is the equivalent of your roots for a plant. It determines how your trunk will grow into the future, depending on where your roots are plunged. And your roots are kind of your beliefs, which are based on your memories and experiences, and the way you've interpreted them from your present moment, of course. But let's take a concrete example to illustrate this more clearly. Day one. Day one, you walk in the street and you meet this charming lady, which presents to you a little petition to sign for, people that are mute. And of course, she says she doesn't say she's mute, but basically she just goes, saying she's mute. You come, you sign the petition, and you realize that after putting your name and everything, there's also a little box saying how much you wish to contribute. There are a few other names. One says, 10 euro or $10. One says 20 euro dollar. So you've already half filled the form. This actually happened to me, so this is why I'm explaining to this. And so you're like, oh, now you feel bad and you don't want to give nothing, so you give, something like 5 euro. You fill in the box and you put 5 euro. Lady says thank you. You go to your office, and at the end of day one, you feel positive. You feel good about yourself. You've helped the needy and the vulnerable, and based on that belief, what you deduce from that experience that is in the past now is that you are somebody that's a good person, and you're going to help into the future. So if you meet somebody like that in the future, you're going to also sign, and it makes you feel good. But then on day two, you tell to your colleague, you tell that experience, and that colleague says, but that was a fraud. I know this kind of scheme. She's just pretending to be mute, and she's actually just stealing money from people by printing a random petition which is not linked to anything official, and just taking your money. And it's been in the papers and blah, blah, blah. And so at the end of day two, you feel negative. And you feel like you've been led astray, you've been lied to, and you feel, how should I say? Well, you don't trust. You have a problem with you're wary, basically, of people. I don't even know how you spell this. You're wary. Was it wary like this? I don't know. Anyways, you're not trusting. Let's put it that way. It's easier. Sorry for the mess up. So you have a problem with trust, and you feel like you're not going to give, not going to contribute next time, and you'll be more wary of these kind of schemes, and making sure that you're not going to get yourself that people steal your money basically from you. Then on day 3, you read an article in the newspaper which says that, and you recognize the picture of this lady there, that she was basically killed to death by her husband, who was forcing her to do these kind of petitions. And he killed her because she didn't manage to collect enough sufficient funds for his liking. And in a fit of rage, he just basically, beat her to death. And so at the end of day 3, you feel kind of mixed feelings. It's both positive / negative, because on the one hand, you kind of saved the life of that lady for that day at least, because you've contributed for the funds that she collected, and perhaps she had enough on that day for her husband not to kill her. And so you kind of saved her life, at least for that day. But then negative, because, it's a kind of short-term kind of solution, and, eventually, something would have happened. And so at the end of day 3, you have mixed feelings. And you feel that the world is more complicated that you may have assumed, that you may have been a victim in this setting, but she was also a victim of her husband. And then maybe he was a victim of the banking system, which put him into a situation of over-indebtedness, and given his background and youth, he used violence because he was abused when he was a child. He used violence on his surroundings to make sure that they would give him the money so he could pay back the bank, and then the bankers, and etc. and etc. and etc. And so the conclusion after day 3 is the way you're going to react is you don't know. You'll try to analyze the situation a bit more, or maybe you'll act on instinct or intuition. And so you see that basically from a single event, a single memory in the past that has not changed, you have still given that lady those €5. You're still kind of subject to fraud, but then you understand that at each day that you're passing and you analyze what happened from your present, from your eternal present, that past changes. Your interpretation of it changes, and therefore it also changes. It completely changes the narrative of what happened. And because you've reinterpreted the past, then your future also changes based on that, because your beliefs are changed now. You don't see the world as black and white anymore. You see things as being more complicated, for instance, as you advance. And so this idea of the importance of changing your past, the importance of, it's like, uprooting a plant and planting it in more fertile soil, cannot be understated, because it's the biggest lever you have on the future is sometimes, the key is sometimes to be found in the past. Because the present is what it is, but if you can change anything, it's the past and your memories or your interpretation of the past. And that will set off a chain reaction which will reverberate across into your future. And the way you're going to react to future situations, for instance, your behaviors, whether you'll react with anger, compassion, patience, impatience, all of these things are dictated by revisiting the past, reinterpreting it, transcending it, it actually does change, because if you look at my other esoteric videos, since there are an infinite number of pasts that you could have experienced, by shifting your focus from one to the other, you're actually changing who you are in the present by a way of reverberation. So I hope this was interesting. I just wanted to quickly give a concrete example of how you can kind of manipulate this kind of idea of a fixed past and the fact that just shedding a new light on the past can completely change your experience of the future. So see you in the next video. I hope you found this interesting, and feel free to comment.